Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Doing well.
Good.
Doing well.
All right.
We're going to have a couple follow-ups on some stories here today, but no startling news. The one thing, though, it looks like we're stepped back a little bit from the Russians invading Ukraine. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I want to start off with talking a little bit about that. Russia was said to be poised to invade.
It's coming any second.
All the propaganda and all of a sudden. And now it comes out Russia may not be poised to invade Ukraine. They're here, they're building up all this anticipation. And, sometimes you wonder, people who run the show, and there are some powerful people, in the media, in the government, in the whole system, and when they seem to do such dumb things, you try to figure it out why. And one thing that helps me is that they like chaos and they want to benefit by it, and they want to, bring about a new system of government. But other times it just means it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, they changed their mind. At least the news changed their mind. May not be poised to invade Ukraine, but that was our position. Well, why should they be? And all these numbers were there, and it made no sense whatsoever. So I think this is a signal that people can breathe easy now that the troops aren't going to be rolling in there. I don't think they ever had that intention to doing it, but it's still a dangerous situation because there will be always a possibility of somebody saying, "No, we need a little fight going on here. We need to convince people that this is serious," and then all of a sudden there's a false flag or whatever just to stir up trouble. So for now, I think that area might settle down a little bit.
Yeah, well, I think the main thing to take out of this is what this says about the media. Now, we know the Pentagon and the administration, as all administrations, are a bunch of liars. But it really gives the media a black eye that they deserve. And there's a reason why nobody trusts the media. Nobody watches the mainstream media, because rather than trying to get to the bottom of things, getting to the bottom rather than not being stenographers for the administrations, the media just reports it and hypes it and hypes it and hypes it over and over again. And their credibility should be completely shot. But I put together a little timeline. Part of it is humorous, but it just shows you how this progressed. And it started back in December when the U.S. administration started talking about an invasion is coming and the Russians are amassing troops in Russia. How dare they? And let's put this first one up, though, because the timeline, I think, is important, because they're going to deny that they did this, but it's all there. It's all in the papers. This is the president in the New York Times not long ago. Biden predicts that Putin will order Ukraine invasion, but will regret having done it. And then that's amplified by Antony Blinken, the most hapless Secretary of State there ever has been, I think. Put the next one on. So Biden, they're going to do it. They're going in. And here's Blinken. Blinken urges Western unity, warns that Russia could attack Ukraine on short notice. He's getting everyone amped up. And then, Dr. Paul, remember, we're evacuating our embassy in Ukraine. We're evacuating the embassy. Remember that? And then the EU foreign minister says, "What are you talking about? We haven't seen anything." And so here's Blinken, and let's do the next one now. I just want to do these in order. Blinken puffing it up. And then the next thing, we're preparing over 8,000 troops for possible deployment to aid Ukraine. We're going in, boys. It's happening. Pumping it up. And then let's do a next one. The next one, please. And then here is the Defense Secretary of Ukraine. He's asked about this. They say they're going in. They're saying that the Russians are going in. What's going on? Alexei Danilov, he appeared to downplay the risk of a larger conflict early this week. Quote, and I think this is a quote, he was interviewed on BBC. "As of today, we don't see any grounds for statements about a full-scale offensive on our territory. It's even physically impossible," he said. And he added that they're tracking the troops, quote, "maybe seeing Russian troops as an oddity to our foreign partners who finally saw that there are Russian forces and they move in a certain way." So here they're pouring cold water on Ukraine itself. And then here the next one. This is today. This is John Kirby, the spokesman of the Pentagon after the original thing that I said, they're invading, they're going to invade, and here he is today. Quote, obviously, we're mindful of things that Russians could do that would potentially give us indications of some sort of imminent incursion. However, we're not there yet, but we're watching those indicators very, very closely. How's that for invasion is imminent to, well, we're watching it?
You know, they've picked sides over there, and our coup had a lot to do with it. There's the EU and NATO on one side and the Russians on the other side. But it's always a little bit bewildering that even the people now in charge of Western Ukraine, you know, they do generally what we tell them, but they must get frustrated at times because here, you know, they're going to suffer no matter how much they're supposed to be our loyal allies and our henchmen to secure whatever we want to get out of Ukraine. They just don't, they go along with it. You'd think there'd be sort of an independent spirit, but if they had a libertarian society, they might have something to argue for. You'd have a different situation, but they're not, I don't think they're into this liberty issue.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the things have changed a little bit there. So there's hope it stays settled. But you know, things last for a long time. You know, look how long how long things have gone in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Oh, what? But we finally got out of Afghanistan. We finally got out of Iraq.
Yeah.
Let's really be honest with ourselves. Have we just walked away from that?
Yeah.
But there is something that has lingered for a while, and we talked about it a lot, and there's a lot less activity there, but there's some interesting information, scary, even though not surprising to us, on what happened, you know, within a month, I guess, of Trump being sworn in.
Yeah.
And that what happened then was the whole thing that the Americans bombed a dam that they had promised they wouldn't. It was on the off-bomb list.
Yeah,
but we were involved doing these things as a follow-up from the previous president. And yet the dam was bombed. Fortunately, it wasn't totally destroyed, but it must be some huge dam and a very great benefit to a lot of people. But anyway, it ended up getting bombed, but Americans said, we didn't do it. Somebody else had to have done it. It's the Russians did it or something, but the Russians wouldn't have done that. But anyway, that has existed. But now the story came out. New York Times collaborated, you know, back in 2017 by, you know, propagandizing. But I think they released the story now that you know, we have evidence now that guess what? Our government did it, which should be embarrassing to us. But instead, if you mention that, you're liable to be said you're unpatriotic. You have to endorse your government no matter what they do. And I said, baloney. You know, you don't endorse your government when they're doing bad things. You ought to be more patriotic and say, you know, get my information elsewhere.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, they bombed that. But now the evidence has come out. And it's interesting, it was within weeks, I think, that happened, and it had something to do with the president being, you know, just newly sworn in. And you know, when I first saw this thing, I said, holy man, this is another thing, you know, and saying, well, it's all Trump's fault, it's all Trump's fault. But yes, it's true, he was in office, but it was also within a week to undo the infiltration of the deep state is no easy job. So my guess is that a lot of this stuff was in motion, and I think he's made some very strong statements back in those years that we need to get out of there. We are not going to expand this war in Syria, but that's a debatable subject too.
Yeah, it was clearly a war crime. It was on the do not bomb list because there were tens of thousands of people who lived downstream who faced dying.
Right.
I mean, this is a serious dam. Anyone could look it up. We don't have a picture here, but I'm looking at one right now. It's a massive, massive dam. We were not supposed to bomb it, and the U.S. did. Thankfully, the military-industrial complex is not all it's cracked up to be, and the bomb they dropped was a dud, so it didn't blow up. It was a bunker buster. If it had blown up, there would have been tens of thousands of innocent people dead. And so it shows a couple of things, I think, Dr. Paul. First of all, it shows how much they lie. They lie constantly. They lied about this. They lied about the chemical weapons attack, several of them in Syria. And we know they lied, and they forced the OPCW to lie. They forced them to cover up the fact that there was no chemical attack. And it also shows you this really was a chance for President Trump to clean house. You know, remember what Kennedy did when he basically inherited the Bay of Pig invasion. You know, he learned the hard lesson of the deep state, really hard. Trump, unfortunately, didn't learn very much of anything, and he let them continue to roll over him throughout his administration.
Of course, Kennedy suffered too,
Yeah.
because it was Alan Dulles who was running the show, and Alan Dulles got fired over the whole thing, and Alan Dulles had a long memory.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, I believe the stories written about him. But anyway, that's you know, happened back then. But it is true that Trump says a lot of things that we say, yeah, this sounds good. Even had some people that we liked have some influence, but then again, he'd have three people contradicting the people we thought were favorable. So no, he doesn't have a firm conviction of his foreign policy, probably monetary policy as well.
Yeah.
But I think it is true. I think he has made more sense than some of the hawks, you know, the super hawks, and that's what is so dangerous. And but even more dangerous is how much influence do the people in the deep state and the CIA and the FBI and the whole thing. But you know what? More and more people are waking up. You take that whole incident about Kennedy that I alluded to. You know. Nobody believes that Oswald probably even killed him or was involved. He was just a patsy.
Yeah.
And I think it's like 80% of the American people believe that. So that's a good start. And some people would think, oh no, you're supposed to believe your government and obey your government no matter what. Yeah, even if they take your livelihood away from you and prevent you from taking care of yourself, your own health, I don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, we want to move on to basically an update on a story that we did a couple of days ago about that seemed unreal. It seemed like it was too weird to be true, that the TSA allows illegal immigrants to use arrest warrants as IDs. And we looked at it and we checked and we checked and it checked out. Well, the Epoch Times did a follow-up to the original article in the Daily Caller, and they did indeed confirm with the TSA that illegal immigrants can use the ICE Form I-200, warrant for arrest of an alien, as identification to get onto a plane, while you and I have to give our driver's license, our passports, you know, blood sample, iris scan. They can kind of breeze through with an arrest warrant.
You know, they say this was clarification, and when it first came out, it was they're backing down. I wonder if there still couldn't be some backing down on this, because it was not cheered, you know, by the American people. But anyway. We end up with it, which is a problem, and that's the big thing about how in the world can we get to this point where it's not a big deal. So if they're saying, oh yeah, we still do that, we use these warrants for arrest as IDs. I mean, what an insult, you know, to the American people, you know, to think that, and everybody knows that there's a lot of. Well, they know drug dealers are coming over, but there are other kind of people coming over too that are causing trouble. I do want to read a short quote from Matthew Tragesser, and he's a spokesperson for the Federation of American Immigration Reform, because I think it tells us a little bit, you know, what's going on. He told the Epoch Times this. He says. And this is his quote, "In no way, shape, or form would an American citizen be allowed to board a U.S. flight simply by flashing an arrest warrant." So the whole thing was so preposterous, but now they're back to that. Yeah, we do that, and they're not hiding from. If anything, that would cause immediate concern for law enforcement officials. This unconscionable move by the Biden administration aids and abets criminal behavior. Rather than facilitate illegal immigration deep into the interior, the administration should look to deter it, as more than 2 million individuals attempted to across into our country unlawfully during the first year.
Yeah.
So I think most Americans know this problem, and I think that's one of the reasons why Biden he's not one of our most popular presidents ever.
Well, what the TSA said is that we've been doing this since we started, and you would have said, well, that's why we didn't want you to start.
Yeah.
You know, they say we've been doing it. It's just funny. It also has another relation to our first story, but basically, U.S. border, no big deal. Ukraine border, let's go to war, right?
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Talk about getting things mixed up. But we want to move on to the third one if we're ready, and this is something that hits close to home, and it is pretty concerning, and it has to do with the Capitol Hill Police. Remember the members going down to the floor over and over, constantly thanking them for their service and all of this, even as they're possibly even involved in January 6th. But let's put up this next clip, and I'll send it over back to you, Dr. Paul. This is from Politico. Capitol Police examines backgrounds and social media feeds of some people who meet with lawmakers. Pretty interesting.
Yes, and I hope the end results of January 6th will at least approach the truth coming out about the Russiagate. You know, that went on for so many years. Now there's not much talk about it when we really know what went on there. But this has been going on, and I think the way these individuals have been treated, you know, we've said, a lot of people say, well, you know, they were busting things up a bit, and well, then we should investigate it.
Yeah.
I understand there are a lot of films that, you know, the one side, the Republicans aren't even allowed to watch.
Yeah.
Yet the Democrats watch everything, and it's a lawless activity that they're going in, and it's almost you know the issue of law and order isn't it? It's the law of the jungle, the political jungle. You do whatever we have to do to maintain power. And I thought maybe they would back off at a point like this when the evidence is pretty strong that that group will probably lose some power come next year or the end of this year. You know, they're going to lose some clout, but that isn't. It seems like they're buckling down and even becoming more aggressive. But what they have done to American citizens, compared to what you do if you happen to be an illegal alien, you know, oh, what did you do? Well, we don't arrest you, and oh, that's just a petty crime. You only stole $1,000, so just get out of our way.
Yeah.
It really is amazing. But at the same time, you know, it's defund the police and all that is going on. That is waking up some Americans, and they should be awakened on this. So let's hopefully some good come of it.
Well, the defund the police wouldn't be a bad idea when it comes to the Capitol Hill Police because they have a massive, massive budget. I think it's bigger than the entire D.C. police budget. And they answer to no one except the Speaker of the House. I mean, that's her personal Gestapo, and it's dangerous. But the story we're talking about, it appeared in Politico. But basically what's happening is that the intelligence unit of the Capitol Police are going through the emails, the social media of people who visit their representatives in the House, and they're scrutinizing it. There's no suspicion of them doing wrong. They're scrutinizing it. They're scrutinizing staffers. They're looking at staffers' personal posts. And really, I mean, as a former staffer, Dr. Paul, I can tell you, that is really, really concerning and inappropriate because, you know, I had a job to do. My job was to brief you on foreign affairs, on things that were happening, and to do that I had to talk to people. I don't want the Capitol Hill Police in on this conversation. It's none of their business what I'm doing to serve you in my position. But here's here's the quote from the Politico article. They use, of course, the January 6th as the excuse. After the January 6th insurrection, the Capitol Police's intelligence unit quietly started scrutinizing the backgrounds of people who meet with lawmakers, according to 3 people familiar. And here's Politico. Politico has also viewed communications describing this new approach, part of a host of changes the department implemented after the Capitol attack. Examining the social media feeds of people who aren't suspected of crimes, however, is a controversial move for law enforcement and intelligence officials, given the civil liberties concerns it raises. Oh, you think so? Right.
You know, it always seems like they do want an excuse. They're looking for moral justification. You know, things are bad, so we had to do it to make everybody safe. And it was just like the Patriot Act. the excuse there was, of course, 9/11.
Yeah.
And now this comes along, and they're doing all these things, and it's the excuse is January 6th, insurrection.
Yeah.
They're about ready to take over the whole government.
Yeah.
You know, because they had cannons and bombs and airplanes.
Bunker
and they had
busters.
Tanks there.
Yeah.
You know, positively amazing how they hit them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, but it's an excuse, and I think the way I look at what they're doing to these people that they round up, and also this invasion of people's privacy, is that the citizen is guilty until cleared.
Yeah.
You know, we'll assume, oh, you were there, you were outside. We have you on a picture.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're guilty, and we're going to lock you up, and you won't even have any chance for a trial or anything else. It's really a bad example of what's happening. It's I wished we could get more of that evidence and the concrete evidence that will show, some of this lawlessness that are going on. Because I still believe in the American people that if they had the facts, they would, do better. But I think they're getting some facts. That's why I think things are moving in our directions. But there's a big machine out there that passes out most of the stuff that they're listened to on television, a few other places.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would like to think that if Republicans take back over the House and Senate, they would give a really hard look at what the Capitol Hill Police has become. But I don't have too great of expectations that they'll do that.
Yeah, right.
So the last one we want to talk about is also controversial, and it's this news. And DeSantis is furious. The FDA halts the use of Regeneron and other monoclonal antibody COVID treatment. DeSantis says it's reckless. So they say, no, it doesn't work. We're getting rid of it. You can't use the monoclonal antibodies.
I think this is all anti-Trump propaganda, because he used it at the beginning and he still speaks favorably of it. He grasps, good positions, but sometimes it gets a little sloppy and it's not identified because, it hasn't been protected, the whole time. He should have replaced a few people at the CDC and a few other places.
Yeah.
But this is the monoclonal antibodies. Many members of my family used it because we were less interested in taking a vaccine and all those other shots and wearing all these masks and the antibodies. At least it should be permitted.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. It should be legal to use. And the big question is, who should decide? Well, it was decided by edict that you could use it, and now it's taken off the market, sort of like ivermectin.
Yeah.
Now it's breaking out that ivermectin might become legal.
Yeah.
Legal in a sense. Hey, in New Hampshire, I mentioned this yesterday. I think they're talking about allowing people to walk into the drugstore and buy it. What kind of freedom is that? Isn't that too careless? I mean, what would people do with that? And then the big question is, what if the people who argue the case for ivermectin are right? Just think of the harm done and who's liable and how many people suffered, got sick, and maybe died because they didn't have it. Because the evidence is building, and we talked yesterday about this big study that Duke is heading up to try to get the evidence. But it's such a shame that the government has so much control, and they're in bed with the pharmaceutical industries, that they control the dispensing of it and the research of it and all the corporations, because the corporations are so dependent on government money that they will follow through all this social conditioning that you have to go through, because that's what we're interested in, even if we get false information, which I think they work with quite frequently.
Dr. Paul, it is funny now that they've given permission for these two very expensive new pills to come out, that all of a sudden they forbid the use of the monoclonal antibodies. I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Oh, yeah,
I'm sure it's totally unrelated. But with ivermectin, I watched part of the Senator Johnson panel, and that is really worth watching. I didn't watch a lot of it, but just some clips. One of the doctors there said the problem with ivermectin is one dose costs 5 cents. They liked remdesivir because it cost $3,000 a course, even though, as that one doctor said, it had a lot of negative effects. So, follow the money, right?
You have to take care of the complications too. And
Yeah.
there's been some complications from vaccines and also the boosters, so that keeps it ongoing.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank our viewers again for watching. Please subscribe and hit like and leave a comment. Keep it alive. The more it happens, the more I like to look when I go on YouTube and see it being recommended. Maybe they'll let us do that again if enough of you do that. But whatever the case, thanks for watching. We really appreciate you give us the energy to come out every day and try to at least report the news a little bit more objective, I hope.
Right. And I too want to express my appreciation for the support we get. And one of the rules that I try to follow myself and tell other people they should is when you deal with the issue of liberty and promoting it and you're spreading a message, whether you're writing or talking or visiting or supporting somebody, is that it's great to get together with people. That's why I was disappointed that in the last couple of years the conferences are scarce, and I personally don't like flying commercial, so I don't go to very many. But the one thing is I think people should have a good time. It's serious stuff, and getting together with like-minded people, I think, always beneficial, sharing ideas, and I think that that has been hurt. I don't think that's just a coincidence of good health habits and good health rules that this was a consequence. I think this delights some people who don't want the competition to have any access to the public and spreading a different message, because truth actually becomes treasonous when you have an empire of lying, and those conditions are bad. So the only thing we can combat that with is telling the truth. But conditions have been much worse than we have today in getting messages out. I get a lot of messages, now this is so bad, we can't do this, and this is what they're doing, and they do, that's true. But it's always been that way. And yet today, at least we've been able to mention how some of these ideas, they come and go, and but the number of people that are coming around to understanding that the government's too big, too authoritarian, they don't function very well, they do more harm than good. And whether it was 40 years ago bombing a dam that they shouldn't have been and then lied about it, or whether it's controlling the pharmaceutical industry where people make a lot of money. It's similar. I guess that's because man is imperfect, and it's a real challenge to try to sort it all out. And I have come to the conclusion a long time ago, yes, it would be. What if we had only very honest, righteous people that went to Washington? Well, that's not going to happen because you couldn't find the people. That's why my conclusion is, if you want to really move in the right direction, always seek to shrink the size and scope of government. The number of people there and the authority they have over people, and don't let them pull the wool over your eyes and say, we're taking care of you, we're making you safe, we're going to keep the enemy from hurting you, because there will be an insurrection if we're not there to protect you at the Capitol. And we have to protect you because I know you people think that you could protect yourself with the use of the Second Amendment. But there's a question about that, on just how useful that has been, because there's a lot of concerted effort to make sure that we can't defend ourselves. But anyway, I still believe that the American people, if they have the right information, will support the cause of liberty. It was fully supported to a large degree, at the beginning of our history, and a lot of it lasted for a while, but the last 100 years plus hasn't been good for the cause of liberty. But there's no reason why we can't say, well, it's bottomed out. The destruction of liberty is bottomed out, and we're going to regain our liberty. But that remains to be seen. It depends on how much involvement we get and how we can promote these ideas. But I do want to thank everybody for supporting our message on this program, and please come back and visit the Liberty Report soon.